The New Orleans Saints are hosting LSU cornerback Mansoor Delane as one of their top 30 pre draft visits. It was a bit of a head scratcher for me. I'm thinking, is he really a viable pick at number 8? Are the Saints doing due diligence, or is there something here I'm missing? Well, decided let's break down some film. Let's talk about some NFL concepts. Let's talk about NFL scheme fits. See if we can't figure out exactly what's going on here. I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So, Mansour Delane, you are getting, in my opinion, an elite cover cornerback. We'll talk about his run defense a little later, and there's a lot to like there. Don't get me wrong, but we're really going to primarily focus on his covering ability. 6 foot, 195 pound cornerback. Excuse me. Played 4 years of college ball with no red shirt. 3 at Virginia Tech, and I didn't pull any Virginia Tech film, but I'm going to connect some dots right here by mentioning that Blake Baker, LSU's defensive coordinator and a very good one in Missouri, was having trouble implementing his full defensive scheme at LSU, primarily because they were not doing a good job of recruiting the right players or talented enough players to fit his scheme. They focused on that in 2025 and fixed that problem real quick. One of the gems of that, in this case, in the transfer portal, was Mansour Delane. So they wanted him for a reason to fit what Blake Baker wanted to do. He fit it like a glove. And then if you were watching LSU play, his style of defense, Baker's, very similar to a lot of the things you're seeing in the NFL, like a Brandon Staley, like a Vic Fangio, like a, yeah, on and on down the line. So I think that kind of pops right away. And then when you look at his individual numbers, look, outside of a minor tackling issue, he had his sophomore year at Virginia Tech, where his missed tackle rate popped up north of 16%, which is you're like, you really don't want to see that. He was 9 or 10% missed tackle rate, which is a much better number, especially for an outside corner. And in his 4 year career, it finished at 10.6. So that year, there were some not so nice grades as far as his tackling. But outside of that, PFF regularly had him 68 and above all over the place. You notice the exceptions when it didn't happen, like that particular year. So very good at what he did for 3 years at Virginia Tech, which was primarily play outside corner his junior year, like he did at LSU last year, but the year before that, his sophomore year, and of his 1,200 plus snaps that came in defense, over 1,000 were over the last 3 seasons. He was a little more balanced, playing not quite as much on the outside and probably about 3 to 1 outside to the inside the box, the slot, and a little bit of deep safety. Those numbers went more to 5 or 6 to 1 his last 2 seasons, but still did get snaps in both years, kind of spread out like he had done it year before, just primarily moved to the outside. He was good. His numbers were good at Virginia Tech. They just went to a whole new level at LSU. I think that's going to jump right out at you. 40% completion percentage. So 35 targets. He only gave up 14 completions for 165 yards, 0 touchdowns. His quarterback rating, which had been outstanding at Virginia Tech in consecutive years, 80.7 and 83.7. He jumped that down to holding opposing quarterbacks to a 31.3 QB rating in 2025. So when you're going to go look at his PFF grades, you're going to find that 350 plus coverage snaps that were made you eligible for this list. So that's all cornerbacks, not just draft prospects. Coverage grade overall 90.7, upper 10 percentile. That 40% completion percentage, definitely upper 10 percentile. Man coverage grade 89.1, upper 10%. Zone coverage 76.7, upper 10%. The only meaningful stat he wasn't upper 10 percentile in as far as all corners last year was run defense, where he just missed. He's probably upper 20, 25%. Still not bad. Graded out at 74.4. We'll talk about more about that at the end of this. When you look at his film, he easily transitioned and pulled a couple of different games, Clemson, Florida, Arkansas, etc. That different styles of offenses coming at him seamlessly, was not having any trouble whether he was in zone or man for the most part. In fact, if you want to go by PFF grades, and I don't need to know the grade in this game because I watched it, but it was when they played Texas A&M, the whole LSU team got their head kicked in. He wasn't any different. This is a low score for of 60.7, and you're not going to pull a lot of great film from him out of that one. But every time, everywhere else, every time you just start looking at something, you're like, man, that is a really, really good football player. I think the only real knock you might have in his coverage ability, and we'll do the knocks now and then finish on his running game, is he's had 7 interceptions in his college career, one, four, and then only two last year, but wasn't targeted a lot. And then again, you go back and look at his film. There was a reason why he wasn't targeted a lot. Not only because everybody knew he was very, very good, but he could just tighten up coverage so much that even if you looked that way, there was just no possibility to throw the ball in that direction. Or it definitely made you think about pulling it back down and going somewhere else, which I can't read into that there isn't some degree of playmaking ability that and he had 4 interceptions the previous year, just wasn't able to tap into because of those circumstances. And I feel like that's probably what it is, but don't really know for sure. The other than the 1 year of a little accelerated missed tackle rate of sophomore year of Virginia Tech, the only other knock that I would put on him right now is he still has not run a 40 or put up any of the, a lot like we talked about Caleb Downs, put up any of the, hey, I'd really like to see a 40 time. I'd like to see a 10-yard split. I'd like to see a few other things to go confirm that you are indeed as athletic as I think you are, and it will not be a problem transitioning a lot of your game to the NFL because you seem to understand the scheme and the basics of what we're trying to do, and you have the athletic ability to go ahead and get it done. I just like to check that box. So see him run a 4.40 at LSU and just put that to bed. Outside of that, I just don't have a lot of complaints over in his overall game. And the fact that you could say that about him kind of says a lot about him as a prospect and a future NFL player. Let's go ahead and take a look at his running stuff, and then we'll go ahead and wrap up this video for 2025. What I noticed kind of popping on film is he does a great job of reading and reacting, understanding the play, and being able to come up, and whether he's in zone or man, come up and make a tackle in the running game. And he really has a great understanding of leverage and outside leverage specifically because he understands, and you can watch the way he plays, that he cannot let that ball carrier get outside of him and turn it up the sideline. When he's in deep coverage or man coverage, he also has a good sense of when he needs to fill in for the run, or even when he needs to come up on a check down pass or some shorter areas of the passing game. Because I mean, quite honestly, that's like an extended running play in most cases. He shows a willingness, more than a willingness, to come up and get dirty and get down there and get a ball carrier on the ground. So I really like his run defense. Not only are you getting an elite cover corner in him, possible elite run defender, but at least a very good one. To back up a little bit, just a few little topics to talk about, kind of mashed all together. One, we're talking about this is based on the fact that he's making a top 30 pre-draft visit to the Saints. It's just like an extended job interview. The teams can conduct a physical. It's going to be kind of a meet and greet with the player and the organization. The coach, the support staff, members of the organization. So I really like a meet and greet slash job interview. It's just kind of how it seems to me. Because they're not, as far as I know, there's no working out on the field or anything like that. Teams can have up to 30 prospects visit, no more than that. Not required to have 30, nor they're required to specifically post somewhere, definitely where you're going to get a list of who's coming. But you will get a wind of most of them, I think, especially top end guys like Delane. And I don't know how much to read into this. It's initially you're thinking most guys in the top 30 just aren't going to make it to 42, and that's our second pick in this draft unless we do something. And I really wasn't looking. I know corners, we do want to bring in some more help there, but not specifically going looking at Delane. But then you started thinking about some of the things that Brandon Staley does and what they're doing in the NFL and what we just kind of saw and talked about on film, right? And I think you kind of have to start at the 70-25-5 rule in the NFL, which is basically since the last 3-4 years, roughly. Basic rule of thumb is the NFL overall defense, and this has kind of been borne out on some of the guys that watch these stats or some of the websites that watch these stats, is the NFL average is somewhere around in this fall 32 teams 70% zone coverage, 25% man, 5% other, which other basically encompasses hybrid scheme. Think, too high safety with man underneath type thing. And a little bit of, they call it unclassified, but I'm thinking that's just something happens where the play probably started and ended too quickly to fully let the coverage develop and know exactly where it's at. Stuff like that. There's also, I'm sure, some data error involved in that category, and even just a margin of error of somebody making a mistake recording something. They probably figure that in also. But the point being is that stuff is very limited, and it really boils down to, as it always does, zone versus man. And sharp football analysis, stat ranking, Sumer Sports, next gen stats are all places you can go to that have been charting this. And I think it's really becoming focused around 2022 because I think that's when people really notice this defense showing up in more and more places as opposed to more basic schemes, you know, sort of like we were running under DA, which was even man, basically 4-3-4-2-5, specifically base defense. Not a lot of trickeration involved. They were expecting to line up and beat you physically one on one. The newer defenses are expecting to do that also, but they want to trick the hell out of quarterbacks and try to make it easier that way for them to win all these one on ones. So I went ahead and pulled up, or I didn't pull it up. Actually, I had AI figure this out for me, but just a brief overview of how that broke down in 2025 is this 75-25 rule more or less, true, and how did it work out? The average was pretty close to that. The individual teams, when you're starting with the amount of zone that they run first, the Panthers were number one, ran the most zone at 83%, 11%, and then 6%, kind of the other. Saints were number eight, 78%, 16%, 6%. Eagles, number 21, 69, 25, and 6. Looking all the way down at 32, the Browns, 53, 43, 4. So they were one of the more balanced teams. Houston, DA now in Chicago, more of those balanced numbers like the Browns. But 21 is the first category you get to where you don't hit 70 or above. And here's the amazing thing that has absolutely no correlation between the scheme you're running, how it's fallen in this 70-25-5 rule, and how good your defense is. Because just looking at those four teams that we were taking as example, last year, according to Fox Sports, Panthers was 16th, and I think most rankings would these guys are all going to find in these same category ranges. But Panthers, middle of the road, 16. Saints, top 10. Fox had them at 9. Eagles, number 13, just outside. Browns, number 4 overall. So I think the big takeaway, and this is where this is all leading to, is no matter how you do this, and no matter how the philosophy of most of the NFL is changing, but not all of it, and it's not having a direct effect on scheme, what kind of scheme you're running. I think what is having, as the Saints say, the right kind of player. Talented players that fit your scheme, or where you don't have to quite adjust your scheme so much to fit them. And now it's starting when you're looking at Mansoor Delane, you're going, kind of see what the organization is thinking about there. They drafted Quincy Riley basically last year um, for the same reasons. Good football player. And what he did at Louisville, he talked about it. The organization talked about it after the draft that he fits a lot of what a Brandon Staley style defense is trying to accomplish. Even before that, Kool-Aid was drafted by DA to fit more of that scheme that we talked about that he was trying to run, when in reality he had done an awful lot of, again, this style of defense that we're running now at Alabama, which Staley and Kool-Aid both acknowledged at points last year when asked about it. Well, it's I'm familiar. I should be able to pick it up. Both players did rather quickly, got on the field, and by the end of the year, were playing very, very well for us. So I think that's kind of this is a due diligence thing. I really do because, but now it kind of makes a little more sense and kind of understand a little bit where the Saints might be thinking on this. Not saying that he's going to be number 8 draft pick or he's definitely in their top 10 draft board, but looking at everything going, man, he might fit really, really well. We know we've got guys already here who are very, some young ones, already very flexible that can play all over the field. Delane's shown it. Also, while it's mostly zone that you're running, you still are going to throw some man in there. You still have to have some competent guys that can do both and be able to switch between both. I want to say seamlessly. I'm going to end all this on this. I think the big takeaway that the reason why I did this video, because I debated back and forth, is it worth having? When the realization dawned on me, and this is going back to the last time that I know it was talked about, was at the combine. Todd McShay interviewed Mickey Loomis. And Mickey Loomis, once again, was using a lot of the terms that we're talking about, drafting the right guys. Talked about what we know is true that the Saints typically have a very different draft strategy and draft board from most of the other 31 teams. This is where I found out what I didn't know, which is they make their draft board out of players they want. They don't fill a draft board out to cover all the draft picks that are going to be in that draft. So, and even mentioned there's been years where they were getting close to their last pick and most of their draft board was gone, which explains our tendency to trade up a lot of times. I'm pretty sure. So they're very target specific. It has worked well in the past for us. We could think of first round picks went or second round picks went, yeah, that worked out. And busts where it flat out didn't. So I'm not even saying that's the right or good strategy. That's just the way they do it. Keeping that in mind, talking about all we talked about what an elite cover corner Delane is, what a scheme fit he is, despite the fact primarily an outside guy, did get a lot of play, especially his sophomore year at Virginia Tech, but even junior year and his last year at LSU. Other positions, moving around and being versatile in the defensive backfield, going, it would not shock me. I don't think I can do it right now and say he's top 10 and definitely on our radar at 8. But I definitely can't tell you that the Saints aren't already thinking slightly different from everybody else, including the fan base, going, no, no, that's a guy. That's the guy for us. So, my opinion aside, going, I think there's other areas and other players I'd much rather us draft if they're available. I'm open to the possibility that Mickey's draft board, my draft board right now, may not even be remotely the same, and probably isn't. So, introducing you to Mansoor Delane, and so hopefully, if you weren't familiar before, you know, look, this isn't a name they're pulling out of thin air. Very good football player, elite cornerback in coverage, and you know, in a weird sort of way, the right guy and the right scheme fit and everything else could be the right guy for the Saints as far as scheme fit, talent, and everything else. So, first time here, hit the like, share, subscribe for me. Bang the buttons. YouTube algorithm loves it. Probably foreseeable future. Going to be looking at some of these other top 30 visit guys. It looks like far as I can tell, Mekhi Lemon and Chris Bell, a couple of wide receivers. Bell should sound familiar because he was Tyler Shuck's favorite target, Shucks, last year at Louisville. Coming in some rumors, I saw a tweet where Wheatley, safety for Penn State, had said that, yeah, Saints and I are getting together for a visit. Sure, there'll be others, but I can't guarantee you we'll know every single one of them that do visit the Saints because it's just not required for the Saints or anybody to disclose it. We're relying on the beat writers and the reporters and all to sniff it out and let us know. So keep an eye on that. That's probably where we're going with the next couple of videos. Till I see you next time. Oh, and I'll also be popping some of the older videos up on the end screen right here. Just go ahead, click them on the playlist. Check out some of the other prospects we've talked about in the film room. So, till I see you next time, I'm Tim. Peace out and who dat.